Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todas y a todos. Les queremos dar a todos una cordial bienvenida a esta sesión que está organizada por Feminist Foreign Policy Collaborative, en la que vamos a estar presentando su última publicación llamada Mundializar la Igualdad, Política Exterior Feminista desde América Latina. Este evento está coordinado por Marita Perceval, que está acá organizando la sesión, y se realiza en articulación con CLACSO y Feministas Sin Fronteras. Para todos es un gusto estar aquí, nos alegra profundamente contar con la presencia de quienes están en esta sala y todos aquellos que se han unido de manera online desde distintos puntos del país, del planeta, perdón. En este sentido, lo que vamos a hacer ahora es dar inicio a esta jornada y vamos a presentar a Lyric Thompson. Tenemos el honor de contar con ella aquí, que es fundadora y directora ejecutiva de Feminist Foreign Policy Collaborative, quien ofrecerá a todos ustedes unas palabras de apertura. Por favor, Liri. Desde aquí.
Muchísimas gracias y muy buenas tardes a todas y todos. Para mejor program, I'm going to speak in English, but we do have, if you missed them in the entryway, we do have headsets for live interpretation, both in the room and online. So thank you for being here. Yes, I'm Lyric. It's my real pleasure to lead the Feminist Foreign Policy Collaborative, and particularly to have been able to collaborate with Marita Perceval over the last years, first in her official role in government, and more recently as one of our senior visiting fellows at the collaborative. So it might seem like a peculiar moment to publish a book about globalizing equality when it feels like we're witnessing just the opposite. Our moment seems to be more globalizing misogyny and a renaissance of might makes right foreign policy unfolding as strongmen sharpen the rhetoric of imperialist ambition and chainsaws to boot. And yet, it is in the era of shrinking civic space that we need greater space for dreaming. Our power of collective imagination is a tool that feminist movements have always wielded to create new alternative worlds and to imagine more feminist futures. And they go out into that hard world and do the courageous, difficult work to deliver that dream. Marita Perceval is one such dreamer. She's a poet, she's a politician, she's an ambassador, an abuela, an activist, a sister, a resistor, a dissident, and a survivor. And for me, a teacher and an inspirer. I first met Marita when she was serving as Argentina's architect of and ambassador for their feminist foreign policy. And in less time than most people would be able to do one of the following things, she managed to develop and implement the country's first Política Exterior Feminista, host a regional summit, marshaling additional support and visibility for that approach, anticipate opposition, and mobilize support that might begin the work of protecting the foundation she had built after opposition and unfavorable electoral outcomes began to try to tear it down. She has gone on to continue to embed that work wherever she can ensure its survival, from the halls of government to the corridors of multilateral institutions, in the press, in the streets, and very fortunately for us, as a senior visiting fellow at the Feminist Foreign Policy Collaborative. We're so pleased to be partnering on today's launch with CLACSO and with Feministas Sin Fronteras, and to welcome so many of the amazing authors of this opus, this rich tapestry of victories, lessons, strategy, and solidarity that Marita is making accessible to our many fellow travelers on this journey. So I would like, in closing, to thank not only Marita and her team, but particularly Luz, Tati, Jill, and Lorena for the hours of efforts they have put into today's success. Most of all, I'm grateful for you, Marita. The floor is yours.
Bueno, muchas gracias a Lyric por invitar a toda
Thank
la
you,
audiencia a soñar.
Lyric, for inviting us to dream, to dream on. Now, we are going to give the floor to Marita Perceval. She was responsible for institutionalizing the FFP in Argentina, Secretary of Equality in the Women, Gender and Diversity Ministry. She has been the first ambassador to the United Nations and a senator where she created the Women Caucus, and she created a commission to advocate for feminism. As a senior fellow in FFPC, she has coordinated Mundializar la Igualdad, Política Exterior Feminista de América Latina. This is a publication that we're going to discuss right now, and it delves into the origin of women engagement internationally and their main contribution, and proposes solutions and perspective to face the current and future challenges. Marita, thank you so much and welcome.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. 2024 was the hottest year ever. The loss of biodiversity progresses alarmingly. The species extinction is currently between 10 and 100 times higher than it was naturally occurring. Latin America has seen the most dramatic decline in the size of wildlife over the last 50 years. 2025, there are over more than 56 armed conflicts globally, including in Middle East and Ukraine, and the genocide, Palestine genocide in Gaza. The military spending is billions and billions of dollars in 2024, accounting for 9.4% increase in real terms regarding 2023, and the year-on-year increase since the end of the Cold War. In 2024, 295 million people were in starvation. The period 2024 and 2020-2024 saw an increase in food prices. The wealth of 1% of the richest increased by 33 billion in real terms since 2015, and with this amount, we can end poverty. The joint wealth of multi-billionaires worldwide hits a highest number, and historic debt is in historic records, facing the 27 billion registered in 2023. 60% of low-income countries are at the edge of a debt crisis, obliging poor countries to allocate many resources, as well as middle-income countries, to pay the interest to rich creditors more than investing in health and education and guaranteeing human rights. We have seen dramatic cuts in international cooperation. This might lead to 3 million of additional deaths due to HIV in the next 5 years. Displaced people are more than 120 million. This might be the answer to why an FFP is needed. If transforming this somber conflict is pending, the feminism that are not responsible for having generated this catastrophe cannot stay in the outside. Feminism, from its inception, was conceived as an international movement, an internationalist. According to UN women accounted for 21% of the permanent representative to the United Nations, with only 7% of women ambassadors from 1947 and 73 countries have never appointed a woman representative. In these contexts where there's interdependency, topics such as environmental impact, a different impact that is generalized and cross-cuts all generations, and simultaneous growth of poverty and inequality, especially in developing countries, the rise of food prices, trade conflicts, as well as technological and military, the arms race, and the intensification of all conflicts, the excluding dynamics of digital revolution, financial speculation, and the debt burden, as we have just said, call us to transform in governance institutions at a multilateral level and to democratize international cooperation bodies. These are our priorities in the agendas that all feminists are ready to tackle. Every time our will is not just bringing women on board to keep business as usual. We need to add creativity to make alliances to resist the attacks of traditional misogyny and the rise of hate speech that have led to ultra-right and neo-fascist movements that try to stigmatize and demonize the feminist movement, gender ideology, every time the feminisms identify with the defense of human rights and the protection of democracy and preserving peace by leveraging international policy that can displace the necessary resources. This is the framework where we drive Mundializar la Igualdad. I want to thank everyone. This is organized in 3 sections with 47 chapters, is 900 pages. I want to thank in the first section, whose objective is to analyze the advocacy of feminism in internationalism and the achievements of Latin American feminist women in the Global South in international forums, such as the implementation of FFP in different countries in the region. The second section talks about the feminist solutions and perspective in a world cross-cut in a poly-crisis. And the third section is about a feminist perspective of foresight that is fundamentally to tackle future challenges such as the society of care, the interdependencies, universal cooperation, the future of reality, technology innovation, climate equality to reduce poverty and to increase equality. The 56 and to all the co-authors, I give thanks. The team of collaborative, a huge thank you to CLACSO as well. Thanks for trusting us. Pablo Bomaro, its executive directors, friends, colleagues of Feministas Sin Frontera, Mariana, Luz, Tante Suarez, thank you so much for having supported us and your generous solidarity. I end my remarks by saying that this book begins and ends with our identity. It starts with a letter written by Estela de Carlotto. Estela is 94 years old. She is the president of Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo. She has been struggling for 48 years to recover grandchildren that were abducted by state terrorism. And she wrote this letter because she wanted to attest to the fact that what you told us, and I feel that there are still women that feel like we do. When we were looking for our grandchildren, our daughters, our sons, coming from different corners of the country, different levels, but seeking a sole objective. And she said, much of our history is reflected in this book with the hope and safety that it will open doors. And
Victoria
Victoria Montenegro
concluye su nota
closes
ilustrada.
this book with another letter, and she has been a recovered grandchild. She was abducted by together with her parents, and her parents were killed, and her mother continues being disappeared. Victoria is a legislator in Buenos Aires, and she closes this book with a letter addressed to little girls from Latin America and the world. And she tells them, even though my story is painful, to recover your identity for the daughter of a missing person is something that gives me freedom. I can be born again. I can rebuild out my identity, and to continue living in these unfair, cruel times. We must recover our identity. We must rebuild it, because this will open the doors to see again people's emancipation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marita, for your presentation. After your words, we are going to have 4 panelists. The first one is FFP in Latin American states. I'm going to call Gloria de la Fuente, Noemí Arlentiker, and Blanca Jiménez. Please, you can join us here. Thank you so much. All of them, they are stellar participants engaged in institutionalizing and setting into motion FFPs in their countries. I'm going to give the floor to Gloria de la Fuente. She's a political scientist and a doctor of social science of the university in Chile, Universidad Católica in Chile, and she has been Undersecretariat of Foreign Relations in Chile, leading FFP. She received an award of women leaders that are benchmark of Women Economic Forum. You have the floor. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Marita, and Feminist Foreign Policy Collaborative. They have done a great job, Lyric and CLACSO, of course, thank you, that have pushed forward for this book. Almost 900 pages. We can see there many experiences and knowledge of FFP, and it's really timely facing our current times that are complex. We have seen regression in democracies, and when they come back and when they are threatened, we see a regime where representation is at stake, but they are regimes where the respect for human rights, that is a fundamental pillar to move forward our gender equality policies, and an FFP, that is also at stake. So it seems to me that it's very important to have the different outlook, thinking that we must build on hope and take action moving forward, because we have taken huge strides. I would like to tell you, as Marita was telling us, what we have done in Chile, but especially to think what's the meaning of what we have done so far. First of all, from Chile, we were the first Latin American country in having an FFP, the second one in Latin America, because the first one was Mexico. Why did we do it in this current administration? Because we were very convinced that in our country, from the 50s onwards, we have been subscribing different international treaties in terms of gender violence and gender equality. So this is nothing new. It's not different from what we have done in our foreign policy in a long term. But we have also realized, and this is part of our country history, that the women movements, sometimes they become invisible, but they have been key to push forward public policy initiative. Two examples, that is the cross-cutting nature of women that are liberal, conservatist, but the election movement is born from conservative women that are not anchored in a left-wing approach. So the right to vote it's true there. So these are cross-cutting women that make it possible in Chile to have a quota law, cross-party women that make agreements to do so, women with different outlooks, with different realities, different social status that move forward, and after that they become invisible.
I started this publication with other people that have been working. And the great conversations that we had so that we could reach this chapter. And this fight started democracy in Chile after many years of dictatorship. Women on the street were remembering this very classic statement that they did, that was a very classic statement, right? It started the process of democratization. So it's very important to see this, because women in different times of our history as a country have been a very important part of that reality. So when we talk about foreign feminist policies, we are away from what the tradition of our foreign policy has been. We put a name to this administration. We created a look or a reflection related to a specific proposal that was established in 2023, the launch of our feminist foreign policy, and then it translated into an action plan that identified 8 areas of work and different dimensions, from the bilateral part that is an important part in this foreign policy, going through cooperation, international trade, all that is multilateral. All these activities are established through this foreign feminist policy, and with an action plan that assumed that we left the speech but went into practice, but everything has submitted the work in our ministry, all the services that are related to this, and it also meant an accountability exercise that we did on March this year, which is to say this is the balance of what we've done with our plan. So through this process, we also created a gender division in our ministry that was also part of the plan. Why? Because we understand that gender equality is a fundamental principle that connects with very two clear principles from our foreign policy: the defense of human rights and democracy promotion. When we say democracy, we understand that democracy is cannot be think in a comprehensive way if it does not consider gender equality. Gender equality should be the great conquer of democracy. And we cannot leave aside 50% of the population of our countries. And it's very important to have this work. We created this gender vision not as a reduction of what we've done. And the gender team that depends on the General Secretariat of Foreign Policy in our ministry is in charge of the coordination of all these efforts. And here we have Ambassador Andrea Doppelman. She was just appointed the director of this division and also ambassador. And we believe that as part of her career in the foreign service, she also embodies the diplomacy that is done in the different areas in a silent way. And we have also done different things that were important. We also wanted to create institutional conditions that allowed us to address more spaces. We also started a certification process regarding gender equality from the UNDP. We were able to get an award from them that only 3 institutions in Chile have received, and we have done something that has followed our principles and our institutional practices. We still have a lot to do. We are also risking that in the future other authorities believe that this is not relevant, but we do believe that what we have done so far and we are contributing to solid foundations is basic for society, to acknowledge the role of the 50% of the society, of the population, and that should go through all the areas of our society as well. Even more when we have a state policy that goes beyond different administrations, that has very clear policies that are coherent to what we do right now. And I am very happy because of what I mentioned here, also because of what we have in this publication. And this feminist foreign policy is understood as the state policy in Chile. Also, it is important to acknowledge and make visible, and it's probably the reality of most of our countries, that sometimes the contributions of women, specifically in politics, is not acknowledged. This, in the end, history is built by men, and when we are invisible, when we are made invisible, we forget the wealth of the history that women have contributed for the reality of many of our countries. And this book is going to make a contribution very clearly with a lot of reflections from different ways of saying it, different realities. And I think it's important to set a goal or these gender equality glasses so that we can see like that, not just because we want to. It's because it is a principle of social justice in order to incorporate other people that don't have the possibility to be in these type of spaces. If we are here, it's because we are representing other people that don't have, other women that don't have the possibility to be here because they are taking care of other people. They are in household activities, and even more in some countries where they don't have any guaranteed freedom. They only have these household activities. They don't have access to education or basic sexual health and reproductive rights. That's why we are here. We are here for the other women that cannot be here. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Ahora le vamos a dar la palabra a
Thank you very much. Now we are going to give the floor to Noemí Espinosa Madrid. We are going to do a brief presentation of Noemí, introduction of Noemí. She is from Honduras. She has almost 3 decades of experience. She is recognized for sustainable development, and she's currently General Minister of the Caribbean states, and she is the first woman from Honduras to be appointed that. Good afternoon. It is an honor for me to be here today in a space full of colleagues and feminist friends that we know through our experiences that the personal issues are also political, and we have understood the importance of taking this personal and political dimension to the international area. This scenario where we fight with our senses, with resources, and with the future. Today, our work is brave, to globalize equality. It's a collective proposal that names what we have been doing for decades. to strengthen the margins of what is possible and take the fight for justice towards the mature terrain and the global power. The people who live in this multilateralism world recognizes the challenges that the feminist world faces, and in a world that is not designed by us. However, since we can be persistent, we are still here, sustaining a feminist gaze and drawing alternatives and resisting from the inside out. We have built concepts, we think and we imagine every day new ways of challenging what has been established, because we know that transforming the world begins by raising our voices and also being sure that we can do it in a different way. This book and this conversation is part of that collective imagination that establishes specific and possible proposals. That's why it says the urgent need of another gaze in multilateralism towards the consolidation of a foreign feminist policy. From that conviction that the crisis that we are going through can only be sorted out with another way of seeing it, which is our way. This feminist foreign policy is not only a label or a diplomatic trend. It's a political strategy and a way of rethinking the global order within the margins that are looking for a historical repair. We are asking for what is fair, for what we are owed from centuries ago. And as the book says, it's not only about taking spaces. We are enjoying our way of living. We want to change the rules of the game because the ones that we have right now have proven that they are not efficient and that they have an ethical failure. We want equality to stop being a promise that is not complied and that is always postponed, and that it becomes a follow-up of multilateralism that is relevant for people and a global governance that brings results, that is translated into everyone having access to education, and healthcare and social justice. And for that, we require more than just political will. We require material redistribution, but we also need to acknowledge an epistemological acknowledgement to sustain life. From Latin America and the Caribbean, we have proven for decades that changes do not come by themselves. They come because organized women, social movements, communities, territories, and also the state and diplomacy have pushed the limits. It is not a coincidence that the gender agenda is the most ambitious in the world, but this agenda does not come from the sky. It's the result of the persistence and the need of popular feminism, as well as community, indigenous, Black, youth, rural, and diverse feminisms that have achieved the place in the table and talk to society about what needs to be rediscussed and how it needs to be decided. Now, focusing a bit on the Caribbean, even though there is no formal declaration from a feminist foreign policy, we have seen great progress. There are women leading community processes, fighting for power, women that have made resilience a daily practice. In the Caribbean, there are a lot of leader women that transform the world, some from the streets, others from the governments, and even people from the states. We can see that there are new female presidents, governors, and great leaders in the Caribbean. It's women that do not only break the glass roof, but that we can do more, and we need to acknowledge what is happening in the practice to make it part of the systemic transformation that leads the foreign policy. The problem is that, as usual, these fights go beyond the institutional political frameworks. Regarding the shared priorities, I think that the most urgent one is to see ourselves as the global South, as part of the global South, a Latin America and Caribbean that has shared stories, but also a very strong story of resistance, solidarity, and creativity. If we can achieve to position ourselves as one region, we can push forward equality. That needs to be the starting point to arrange the way in which our countries are considered in the world. The second priority is that we need to continue building from the bottom up, because women at local levels are the ones that are supporting our world. And as long as we have a system that is repressing their women, nothing in an international level will be legitimate and sustainable. And the third one is to abandon the competition logic and move towards a more ethical and generous way based on the real needs that contribute to avoiding exclusion. The challenges are great: structural inequality, the rights language that has stopped being only symbolic and has become tangible, and all these things that have taken decades to build. Right now, equality is becoming part of the international success of what is politically correct in convenient places only. Right now, we see with great concern that we are losing that as well. Dear friends, I want to close this remarks with a hopeful comment regarding the power of our persistence. As I have mentioned, if we have learned something in this region, is that there is no transformation and political transformation if we don't have a collective work. We have the foundations for a collective practice: rural women that are supporting the economy from their communities, leading women that have been pushing their agendas from their local areas, environmentalist defenders, advocates that are working for the planet, and a lot of feminist women in diplomacy that have been opening spaces and resetting the power. As Audre Lorde said, the tools of the master will not change the household of the master. So we are not going to change power if we continue using the same ideas. We need to continue working on globalizing this, because multilateralism is in crisis, but it is there because there are other people that resist losing the power. And since it's our only option, we have a lot of things to contribute: new ways of using power and protecting the common world, protecting democracy, the opportunities of people, and the possibility of an international governance from the South that is plural and transformative. It requires our work and our look. We need a multilateralism of care and diplomacy for peace. Thank you, Marita, for always having this Caribbean look for always looking at the Caribbean and Latin America in the international context. Thank you, everyone, for this road that is better if we are together. Our need, our intelligence, and our collectiveness are the tools that we can use to imagine and build what has never been there, but I'm convinced that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Noemi. Now, our third panelist has the floor. Arlene Tickner, an ambassador at large for gender issues and global feminist policy of the Ministry of Foreign Relations of Colombia. You have the floor. Good afternoon. It's very hard to keep up with this stellar presentation. I want to acknowledge Marita's persistent effort in putting together 900 pages, a person that has led many editorial projects. I can attest to the fact that this is a huge work. So I want to congratulate you on that and thank FFPC, Feministas Sin Fronteras, and CLACSO for that. I couldn't become engaged in the book due to time constraints, but thanks to my co-workers, we could make a small contribution to include Colombia's case. Most of what the other panelists have said reflects the Colombian case. So you are paving the way for me to focus only in some points that I want to bring up. I first want to acknowledge the work of women and feminist organizations that have participated in the creation of this agenda and its protections facing the critical current times where we see regression on our achievements that we thought they were deep-rooted. But this is a good starting point because facing such an adverse challenge and uncertain times, these organizations from the territory are going to continue resisting and persisting in doing their job. Colombia's case is slightly different from others, and I don't want to contextualize foreign policy because Gloria has provided a nice analysis in how Chile's strategy gets on board with other policies. But in Colombian case, this FFP is included in a transformative government project that is peculiar in Colombia. Gustavo Petro's and Florencia Marquez's election in 2022 was fundamental in our country because it was the first election of a progressive left-wing government in Colombia. This happened after the peace agreement in 2016 that opened a wider range of participation and social protest that was not massive in the country, especially due to lengthy conflict. And this opened the way to the social unrest that had different iterations before this government administration was elected. And this is part of a wave of social protest in Latin America and the Caribbean. But in Colombia, it did not have a leverage and it was not as diverse in terms of participation and agendas. The result of that was why this administration was elected. And this administration, in its national development plan, wants to make Colombia a world power in terms of life. This I just want to place emphasis in the fact that this Colombian initiative that places life in all its expressions, both human and non-humans, the sacred nation of life, dignifying life and protecting life, this is at the center of our administration's public policy for change. So this has created implications in our national development plan guiding the policy of this administration. First of all, the notion of total peace and comprehensive peace brought about by the government creates the need for not just remaining with the peace agreement, but to continue negotiations. I'm going to speed up. Peace as a key and necessary pillar that places life at the center, and then territoriality. Noemi has placed emphasis there, the work of women at a local level. And third, I just want to point out that this is tied with the approach of care that is at the center of regional conversations today. And together with this, our National Development Plan proposes a participatory approach to public policy, seeking to approach those sectors that were not engaged, that did not participate in public debates or decision-making. From and in the territory, our FFP and the first action plan in 2025 builds on this foundation that is ethical and political when it comes to proposing a radical change in what we understand by foreign policy, how we do it, and who we do it with. And it's about two policies that are very participatory worldwide. Without mentioning figures, we had thousands of women in all our country, diverse women, making an effort to get engaged, indigenous women, rural women, women with disabilities, LGBTQ women, with parallel public policies that could be like sister policies tending to a wider agenda, women, peace and security, locally and internationally. They are two intersectional policies. In a robust sense, we insist in the need of bringing in this diverse perspective in building the two policies. There was something, I'm running out of time, but this is something additional to this exercise. And with this, I want to conclude my remarks, is what do we understand by participation? Noemi has placed emphasis in the need to build from the bottom up. This exercise has enabled us to understand that participation or engagement in itself does not guarantee that from the territory and from local territories, there will be a genuine and legitimate participation of a diversity of women that are taking care of life, they are defending the territory and the environment. And in this sense, foreign policy and feminist foreign policy and public policy in a wider range has sought to create robust mechanism to listen and to strike dialogue from the territory and with the territory towards giving meaning to participation. And with this, I do conclude my remarks. It's about transformation, deep transformation with hundreds of obstacles on the way. So the chapter places an emphasis on this, but ultimately it means that Colombia is not the same country today in comparison to when this administration won the election. So that's all that I needed to say. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for respecting the time. I know that you have a lot more to say. But finally, for this panel, we want to give the floor to Blanca Jimenez. She is currently the ambassador of Mexico here in France. She's an environmental engineer, a diplomat with over 40 years of work in public office, member of Science Academy. You have the floor, Blanca. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased to meet Marita. I've been engaged in feminist issues, but from the engineering side, and it's really a tough field. I'm not an author of this book, but I was really pleased to be here because it's a time for me to get into contact with this chapter. And through the 7 chapters where my Mexican fellows were engaged in, I want to tell you how the FFP plays a role. In Mexico, since 2020, we've had an FFP or a feminist diplomacy, but my country started working on this much earlier, and we have made huge progress. As you've said, in Latin America, we have some surprising figures. We have done some surveys to create a network of women diplomats in France. And we have compared our countries with other countries, and Latin America is way above the figures. The chapters where Mexico was involved is the first one, the role of Latin American women diplomats in building multilateralism of Leticia Alonso. It's very interesting, and I encourage you to read it because they showed our history. Sometimes we forget that we have been working and we've been fighting for this topic. And she says that without having a clear notion from the 1930s on, there was a group of women worldwide that pushed the role of women and the lack of attention to women. I think it's important to bear that in mind. The chapter of Latin American pioneers working for an equal world, or more fair world. It describes the creation of the United Nations, and even though many women came together for the 50 delegation to have women, there were just 6 and only one signed the letter at the UN, and it was a Brazilian woman. In chapter of FFP tool for parity describes how in the foreign ministry we have been adapting ourselves to the country because our former president, López Obrador, he set a parity or equality at the center of his cabinet. Here now we have 50% of women representatives and 50% men representatives, and senators likewise. This 50% cannot be sustained over time, but we are close to parity. And this has led us to establish a national development plan with several policies. Does the foreign place an influence to homeland issues, or is it vice versa? Or should we adjust ourselves? There's another chapter, complete parities, challenges lying ahead. She is a current senator, and she touches upon an interesting issue. There are many political parties, but they do make agreements in terms of gender, the gender agenda, because we are really very different policy in politics. So we have made agreements here, and this is interesting. Planning and articulating public systems and feminist policies, this is a different chapter, illustrates how these topics relate to protecting women and acknowledging the household work, which deserves a pension, and things that has been kind of historic. Even before the left movement was in power, there were some researchers setting a rule because there are scholarships for young researchers, young women up to 35 years old or 40 years old, and first men were 30 and then 40 years old. Why? Because women were seen as having to stay at home and doing household work. Finally, there's another chapter, Humanist, Feminist, Women, Nature, from Mrs. Ibarra. In relation to the environment, we can see how this affects women and vulnerable groups. I'm engaged in the water issue when we take women to see what we can do and what we prioritize in terms of budget, when there are women there, water is there. Why? Because women take care of children. And when there men need to support women. So here, this brings up two different topics. And the last chapter, Feminist Perspective to Face the Challenges of AI by Gabriela Ramos and Eleonora Allan. This topic needs to be emphasized because we are just beginning to understand what AI is about, and we are starting to explore how it will affect women. We need to pay attention to this. And to conclude, in 2024, Mexico hosted the third ministerial conference of FFP, and tomorrow we'll pass the baton to France. And then we hope to have a Latin American country for the next ministerial conference. And in 2025, we hosted another meeting to prepare for this event, and we are very pleased to share this moment with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to the four of you. Here we concluded the first panel. We would like to invite our two panelists for the second panel.
Aprovecho este momento que están moviéndose para
I would like to take advantage of this moment to remind you that you can scan this QR code so you can have access to the book.
Son solo ustedes dos, van a tomar asiento.
It's only the two of you, so you can sit wherever you want.
Descargas.
The book is reaching the 850 downloads right now.
Bueno, en este caso el panel se
Well, in
tituló
this
Igualdad
case,
de
the
género y
panel
futuro del
is called Gender Equality and the Future of
Nos van a acompañar
Multilateralism. We have Maria Noel Leonizardo and Leonora Lam. We are going to start with Maria Noel, who I am going to introduce briefly. She is a lawyer from Uruguay, specialized in international law, human rights, and gender studies. Currently, she works as executive deputy director on the Center for Justice and International Development and director of the SHIPAN campaign. You have the floor. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. It is a joy for me to join this space, and I would like to start by congratulating Marita and the whole team who dreamt of, coordinated, and achieved this great publication. And thank you very much for contributing with such an extensive group of experts in the region. I think that all the people that are here know that what Latin America has to globalize, not only regarding ideas, thoughts, or insights, but we have the ability to turn them into action. We know about using law, policies, feminism, and diplomacy, but also hope and resilience to achieve transformative changes, even in hard times. So I think that that's what this global context requires. And this book has left us with a good toolkit and roadmap for a feminist movement in Latin America. And I would like to finish the chapters after the event. In the Sequel campaign that I lead, I am convinced that one of the great priorities that we have to globalize equality is to rethink the future of multilateralism, including the persistent place of women in spaces, decision-making spaces, and also institutionalizing parity. In the article that integrates the book, I propose to integrate parity in governance, not only as a justice measure or as an equality measure or a way to respond to a historical gap, but as a key strategy to strengthen legitimacy, efficacy, and the impact of institutions with the global challenges. A way to understand this uh, way of looking for solutions is that parity can be the key of that success. And in this article, I put these reflections on the She-Equal campaign, which is the things that I know. I would like to use two reasons for that. The first one is because I think that the purpose of the campaign offers a specific goal that should be priority for feminist foreign policies in this specific moment. Not because it's the only challenges or the most important challenge of all, but because it represents a reachable and attainable goal that can be made and that has transformative consequences for those challenges that are the most difficult to reach. What we do and what we work on to establish parity in international decision-making spaces, and also with a focus on the spaces that define justice in international areas, international courts, the different treaties, etc. These are spaces that many times go under the radar of foreign policies, but also show fundamental policies on rights, security, peace, climate change, equality, and the absence of an equal participation of women weakens its participation and vulnerates the right to equality. And we know what are the reasons of the roots of this problem. The states, through their foreign policies, are the ones that choose the people that are in these positions. And since, just as the ranking that we post in this campaign shows, every year the government, including those that have adopted feminist foreign policies, have still voted for more for men than for women. And this happens because processes are not transparent. They don't include parity, and they don't have a gender perspective as an essential part for international positions. But we know that changing that is possible. And the development article shows that the strategies that made this possible, that are about understanding that processes are as important as the results. Since we launched this campaign, we have reduced 65% the gender gap in the international organizations that we monitor. We have reached parity in the Inter-American Court, in different treaties in the United Nations. We have increased the presence of women in special procedures in the United Nations, including the affiliation of women in 14 political positions. These transformations were possible thanks to strategies that are essential for feminist foreign policies that are very simple: the active production of data about the representation to encourage changes and accountability changes, active dissemination of information on open positions, recruitment processes, mentoring and support networks for women, studies and wider discussions on the importance of parity and the impacts of underrepresentation, and especially generating and deepening on collaborations among different stakeholders. That should be the heart of feminist foreign policies, including the civil society. I'm sorry, this is, I was speaking too fast, including civil society, the academy, international organizations, and the states to promote political commitments, regulation developments, and different measures that go along with parity. This progress, as well as having a binding framework on parity and the international representation that on the article that was approved in 2024, but also important developments that have been product of the feminist foreign policies in different states in Latin America. This includes resolutions on the Human Rights Council that was supported by Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and Argentina, that for the first time they saw the gender participation in the human rights organizations and proposed a roadmap, and also reforms to different laws that included parity clauses that were promoted by Chile last year. These are specific actions that prove that change is possible. The challenge, besides reaching parity, is sustaining this progress, especially in the current context where we have different setbacks. And sometimes we see that the efforts by the civil society are not enough because sustaining parity requires a political sustained commitment. It depends on the states and the multilateral institutions to assume parity as a permanent obligation. So I want to highlight something fundamental. We need that the states with feminist foreign policies assume this commitment more effectively, not only by promoting institutional reforms, but reflecting their own practices and the commitment with parity by adopting more transparent processes, promoting accountability, and guaranteeing that the gender perspective is a necessary and demanded quality to integrate these spaces. And that leads me to the second reason why I wanted to share this reflection. The experiences in the She Cool campaign have given us the reflection of a process that should be part of everyone, which is the selection of the person that will be in charge of the General Secretariat of the UN next year. After 80 years, the world is still waiting for a woman to be in this position. And I think that very few decisions will have such a symbolical impact in the multilateral system such as this one. This should be a priority of the feminist foreign policy because all the agendas that address this are based on that decision, and the selection process is as important as the result, and we have different things to learn from that. The challenge is huge, but the possibility to achieve it depends on what Latin America knows too well, and that this book set as a roadmap. The combination of the power of civil society and the transforming gaze of feminism with the collective articulation and the political commitment. It is not a minor idea that the two women that were established as leaders in Latin America are very prepared. These are things that should be set as a bar for the goals of other countries. And for the Latin American region, this is an opportunity to globalize equality, not only to use the space geographically, but to have the ability to direct this process in a coherent way with the values that lead feminist foreign policies: transparency, participation, equality, cooperation, and following the common well-being, and guarantee that this process is transparent and participative, that is actually inclusive, and for the first time leads to the election of a woman that is committed with equality and multilateralism. That would not be only a justice action, it would be a decisive step towards a more legitimate international system that is coherent with the equality values. Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. Now we are going to give the floor to our last speaker, Eleonora Blanch. She is a doctor in bioethics and law by the University of Barcelona. She works in bioethics and family law. She is currently a specialist of a program that works in the global implementation by the UNESCO implementation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Marita, first of all. I can't believe that we are both here today. I love you. I admire you. You are very inspirational and you are a mobilizer. You are a great role model. And it's a great pleasure for me to share this panel with Leonor. And I would like to thank the ambassador for mentioning the chapter that we wrote along with with Gabriela Ramos, who is the joint director, and she's also the secretary of the platform for Women for Ethical AI that has different chapters in the gender chapter, the ethics of artificial intelligence as well. And we chose to write about this chapter, and I would like to thank the ambassador for this introduction because regarding artificial intelligence, women are left behind. And in a world in which artificial intelligence is ruling all the areas or dominating all the areas, if we start thinking about those missionaries that Marita, those millionaires that Marita was talking about, these are the owners. They are two white men. So in the top 10, we have these two men precisely because besides having political and economic power, they have this power, other power, which is being the owners of the great artificial intelligence mechanisms that exist today. So there is a concentration of power that is very important. And we have, as Mariana was mentioning, we need to position ourselves, we need to organize, and we need to make it visible because numbers are actually very sad. And I think the word that was used that was that engineering is tough. So if we talk about people that have graduated in ITCs, men are 400% above the number of women. In Latin America and the Caribbean, the degree of STEM, the degrees in STEM are superior is 24% in Argentina, 25 in Chile, 38 in Mexico, and 30 in Brazil. Those are the countries that are in the best rankings. And regarding the workforce, women are only 26% of the positions in information technologies, and Latin American or African American women, it's only 25%. And according to a study that was made before that, we do every year a study that it's called Outlook Study on General AI. And last year we did a first mapping in which we saw that women have only 29% of positions in science and development, and this number drops to a 12% when it's about specific research on artificial intelligence, and 16% in academy positions in this area.
In a world where the requirements for the job needs digital skills, this equal remuneration for the same tax, I mean the labor access, is going to be difficult. But what happened with our representation? Only 1 out of 4 leadership positions in technology industry is held by women, and the representation in decision-making spaces are limited with only 18%. The figures are tough and challenging. But in our Outlook study last year, we assessed the public policies that countries developed. And in a study surveying 138 countries in the Global Index of Responsible AI, from these 138 countries, only 24 had gender references, and only 18 did it in a significant manner. So another six just mentioned gender just because they had to say something about it. So it's only 18 out of 138. So what did we do? This year, our Outlook study made policy recommendations to start saying that countries are not doing what they need to do in terms of AI and gender. When the recommendation gets approved, that is the only global tool that has a gender chapter, because there was commitment and dedication in terms of gender by the people who are leading this recommendation that was led by Gabriela Ramos. So the chapter got included referring to gender, among many things, aside for training and representation, the countries need to focus on a policy with resources. We speak about gender policies, but there's no money, there are no funds for these policies. But we say that there is a foreign policy event, and when that event is for the feminist movement, there are no resources, no funds. And this is replicated everywhere. This is something that is touched upon in the chapter. Aside from that, we have a specific methodology telling us the country status in terms of AI implementation. We are working with more than 80 countries worldwide, and we are surveying gender data, what they are doing in terms of gender. Do they have gender policies? Do they have education, training workshops, and resources that are allocated? Do they have data, statistics? Do they have a diverse AI? And the AI policies have been created by a plural group, a diverse group. So when I told you that we needed to gather more gender data, I was told, no, we'll not have information, unfortunately. So if we are trying to come close to the countries, trying to find out the figures, and those figures are not there, this is self-explanatory because there's no need to study about these topics, about budget, about women's role. So this tells us many things. So in the first assessment, the responses will have no data. And this makes me conclude that countries are not working on data gathering. This is kind of disappointing at the beginning, but looking to the future, this will be useful for raising awareness. It will be an educational exercise, an inspirational exercise to move forward. That's why today it's important for us to include, I'm sorry I got lost among all my pages. I still have 1 minute. The importance of working on AI, but understanding that it reflects the reality that we live today. So when we work on AI and gender perspective, you shouldn't see it as idealized machines coming from somewhere else. No, what happens in the analogic truth is translated into the digital reality. So we need to continue working to create an inclusive and respectful society that is equal in terms of human rights, for that to translate into an equality-based AI. Thank you. Thank you for sharing and for using your time wisely. You've been inspirational. Now, I'm going to call Lyric to the stage to close for her closing remarks about this book presentation. Thank you so much to all the authors.
So I'm going to back myself right out of that corner. Thank you, everyone, for your time today, for this incredible presentations that we heard, and to the inimitable Marita Perceval for this opus. When she told me they might have more than 40 submissions, I said, that's not a paper, that's a book. And indeed it is. So we are inspired by you, by the enormity of what you have curated, and we're grateful for the community that you have invited us all into. And we are particularly appreciative of the opportunity to dream and to read about the progress. We are going to close this segment both in person and online. If you are in person with us, you are welcome to go enjoy a coffee break while we break down and switch the room over for our next event. If you're with us online, thank you for joining us. The event will be recorded and we will distribute it and share all the good news and, importantly, the link to the book. So thanks again. And if you're staying, we'll see you again in 30 minutes.
Very impressed. Yeah, maybe.